Hey, it's Jacob here from Churu. In this video, I'm going to show you guys how to make one of these vertical planters. Essentially, it's a space-saving way of growing foods like strawberries. So I'm going to talk about the pros and cons and how to build one. There's a few tutorials out there already, but they don't often talk about the negative side of things, or not necessarily negative, but things you need to be aware of. They're fantastic, but there are some things to consider, so stick around. So I live on about an acre. I don't really need to have a space-saving device like this. I've got plenty of grow space. A lot of my yard is shaded, and I don't like to cut down the trees to make for more growing space, because I love the trees, I love the birds and the wildlife. I love climbing the trees. I'm always stuck up a tree. It's not the safest thing, but I do enjoy it. I don't really need to do this, but I did it anyway because I wanted to show you guys how to do it, because you might not have a big yard, or you might not want a big yard. Like, there's a lot of maintenance that goes into maintaining a yard like this. The other thing to consider is that you might just not have access. You might be in an apartment and all you have is a balcony. You've already used up all your yard, but maybe you have a bit of space between the house and the fence. As long as it gets plenty of sun, you can grow a lot of food with this simple system. So the best part about this wall-mounted system is that provided you've got enough sun, you can pretty much slap this anywhere. I'm using an old pallet because I get a lot of pallets with my bottles deliveries. I own a sauce company, so I get lots of bottles delivered and they always come on pallets. The other thing is you don't need a pallet. You can attach it to a fence, a plank of wood, you can put it up against the house. As long as you have somewhere vertical, you're good to go, as long as it gets enough sun. So I'll show you how it's made. So firstly, you need to get your hands on some containers. I'm using old 2-litre vinegar bottles as I churn through a fair bit of them with my hot sauce company, but the best part about this system is I can recycle them. You can use soft drink containers if you like gin and tonics. You can use the old tonic bottles. You can use pretty much anything as long as you are able to put a few holes in it and cut one of the ends off. So firstly, you're going to want to pop a few holes for drainage. If you don't have a drill, you could carefully carve out a hole with a knife or scissors even, or use a hammer and a nail, then cut the bottoms off. You can even cut a window in it if you get heavy rains, but I just cut the tops off for maximum growing space. Next, you're going to want to paint them with a white paint. This will protect the light sensitive roots of whatever you decide to plant in here, and using white paint will reflect the sunlight better than a darker paint, which will stop the smaller pots from getting too hot. I used some old spray paint that I found in the shed, but as you can see, it's starting to chip. It wasn't ideal for this, so I might get another paint and slap it over the top, something a bit thicker and that's more suitable to an outside environment, so just be aware of that. You could also just wrap them in hessian or any old cloth or rags, as long as the sun's not getting in and it's reflective enough, because if you're growing something like strawberries, you're going to want a lot of sun, and you're going to want to reflect that because of the smaller container size. It's going to trap heat quicker, so we'll talk about that in a bit. And then simply staple them or screw them or thumbtack them, if you got good enough tacks, into the beam or the crate or your fence if you have a wooden fence, or a wooden beam going across it, pretty much whatever you want. I like using something that I can move around, so if I get bored of having this here, I can put this somewhere else. I like having it here because my balcony is really ugly and underneath there's a whole bunch of junk I'm yet to clean out, so instead of cleaning it, just put these pallets in front of it. It's like when you're a kid and you shove everything in the closet when your mum and dad tells you to clean your room. So it's like, yeah, it looks clean, but the closet's stuffed. Well, that's pretty much what I'm doing here. Most people will utilize a fence, because if you're growing hard up against the fence, now you can employ that vertical space, which is really cool. Then you're going to want to put a little bit of gravel or very small rocks in the bottom. This will help with drainage and soil retention. Then you want to fill the rest with high quality potting mix, something that's well draining, and you're pretty much good to go. You now have wall-mounted pots. The best part about this system is that if you stack them above each other, you really only have to water the top one and they'll drip down into each other. Eventually I'm going to put a trough down underneath and grow even more strawberries in there. I love strawberries, so that's what I'm growing, but you can grow herbs, spices, all kinds of little things. So the pros to this system, the benefits, are obviously the vertical nature of it, as it saves on space. So instead of wasting precious land space, especially if you're in a small environment, you can grow up. It makes perfect sense to have this on a balcony, as long as you can catch the water. You don't want to piss off your neighbors underneath you. If you've got a fence that's sitting there, a space between a shed, as long as you've got plenty of sun, then yeah, you're saving on land space. You can grow something else in the land, or just have a backyard you want to run around in and grow upwards. So not only do you employ that space saving technique, you're also using a water saving technique. I don't have that issue. Again, I'm very privileged. I have a creek spring-fed creek that I can draw water from legally, and so I have not infinite, because the aquifers aren't infinite, but I have a lot of water that I like to employ. Even so, just like I said, aquifers aren't infinite. The spring one day could dry up, especially if we're drawing from it more than it can replenish. So even though I have unlimited free water, other than the cost of pumping, it's not technically unlimited, but I have a lot of water, I still want to employ environmentally conscious concepts. So by watering this, top one, I don't have to bother with the second, and it also saves on time. You save because I only have to water one row. I don't have to sit there and water everything. If you had an irrigation system, a drip system set up, you could go as high as you want. And then having something on the bottom to catch the last bit of water instead of it just running off into the grass, you're saving on water, you're saving on watering time. In a way, we'll talk about that in a bit because you do have to water a little bit more frequently. We'll talk about the cons in a minute, but yeah, vertical nature is obviously the biggest pro to this system. The other really good thing about this is that it's really easy to weed because they're smaller containers. You're not going to get too many weeds in there. They're vertical, so they're off the ground, so weeds aren't going to get in there. It's not foolproof, but there's almost no weeding that you need to do with this system. And being off the ground, again, this all relates to the vertical nature of it. Being off the ground means you're less likely to get slugs and snails. Again, it's not foolproof. Slugs and snails can climb, we know this, but because it's off the ground, they might not even know it's there. You're getting less slaters and other little things, so it's more resilient to pests, let's put it that way. Weeds and pests are almost non-existent. You might want to worry about birds. Birds love fruit, especially delicious strawberries. But again, because of the vertical nature, this is really, really easy to net. You can just put a couple of sticks over the top there and drop a net down, you're done. So it's really, really good for pest control. The other thing that's really cool is because of the small pot size, like you've got enough root space to grow. As long as you're keeping up with the nutrients, you're going to get a lot of fruit out of these things. But what's really groovy is the fact that the fruit hangs over the edge and it's not actually sitting on the ground or on soil or on leaves, which means it's less likely to get attacked by bugs, or get rot, or you're not going to have as much spoilage. Strawberries don't really like, or fruit generally doesn't really like sitting on the ground because parasites and things can get in there, plus they can get soggy and wrecked essentially, or they might not ripen all the way around. Again, another really good benefit to this vertical system. And of course, one of the really cool benefits is the fact that you're recycling. So this is all this stuff that would otherwise go into a landfill is now useful. I don't have to buy pots, I don't have to pay money, it's really cheap. I don't love plastic, but it does last for a while. That's a good and a bad thing when it comes to this. It's really good. You might have to patch it up every now and then. You might get some lids on the bottom that come off, but typically you're going to get really good life out of these things as long as you take care of it. And like, it's better here on the wall with delicious food growing out of it than in a landfill somewhere, or God forbid the ocean. So there's so many positives to this system. There are, however, a few things that you might want to consider which are often overlooked, or perhaps that you just haven't thought of. I didn't really think of them until I started doing this. I grow most of my food in big beds or really, really big pots. I don't typically like the smaller nature of this for these reasons. One of the major things you need to consider is the size of the pot. Because they're so small, using a lot of compost or pea straw or pellet fertilizers or chook poo or anything that you typically throw out over huge garden beds, you can't really do here. I mean, you can kind of sprinkle some stuff in there, but it's so small, and because of the smaller size pots, it means that those nutrients that are in the soil or that you're adding to it are going to be sucked out of there pretty quickly. There's not much nutrient retention in there, so you would need to consider a liquid fertilizer. I use worm juice because I have a pretty good worm farm system. It's not fully developed yet, so I still need to subsidize with typically store-bought liquid fertilizer. So that's something to consider. You're going to be paying money if you don't have a flow-through system, or you haven't employed vermiculture in your yard. You might have your own homemade fertilizers, and like I said, you can put pellets and stuff in there. It's just not as much because of the small nature of the thing. So there might be some additional costs with purchasing liquid feed, which I don't mind the odd bit of liquid feed. I'm not a complete hippie about that kind of stuff. I would like to be more self-sufficient with my composting. I'm getting there, but every now and then a few bucks for a packet of fertilizer, bang, it makes sense, especially given the pot size. The other thing to consider, again, due to this, it's most of the cons are actually just about the size of the pot, is that water retention is going to be low. You're not going to have heaps of mulch on top. You're in direct sun and you're exposing the sides, which means evaporation is large. It's dripping straight through. It's not storing there. It's not wicking. There are wicking systems you can employ. This is not a wicking system, which means you're going to be watering more frequently. So even though we're employing a water-saving system by having the flow-through drip, these dry up quickly, and you don't want them to completely dry. Moist but not completely soaked soil is ideal, especially for strawberries. So you're going to be watering far more frequently. But again, it's kind of makes up for it by the fact that you only have to water the top row and then you're good to go. But something to consider. Yeah, it's flies. I've just fertilised my whole garden with Rapid Razor poop and horse poo and all kinds of compost and worm juice. And it's just attracted so many flies. It's just everywhere, man. We don't usually get too many flies up this parts. And they're those really annoying flies that like sit in your eye and you have to pull them off. You can't just wave them away. Oh, God. But that smell should die down in a few days. But Christ, right now it's pretty hectic. And it's really warm for the first time. So, one just went in my eye before. You don't want to hear this, but I can't be fucked editing out. Now, even though this system is really good for smaller yards, one thing that I don't love about it is the fact that strawberries like to send runners out. So they'll like shoot a little dude out and they'll start a new strawberry plant. Strawberry plants don't live forever. So if you have a patch in the ground, it's like perpetual or infinite strawberries, because one strawberry bush will grow, produce fruit, shoot out a runner, and then in a year's time, and you just got constant growing and dying, and then it's feeding back into the soil, and you have this sort of system that goes on and on and on. You don't get the runners in here, you see, because there's nowhere for them to go. So as they come off the top, they won't start a new strawberry bush. So there is a life. You will have to replace these strawberries in time, because they're going to stop producing. The plant is going to die because they're not in the ground. Now, that's a pro and a con, because some people with limited space, or just they like a nice and trim garden, you don't want your strawberry patch getting out of control, because one thing, it's going to be harder to get to the strawberries if you've got square meterage, a lot more weeding that you're going to have to take care of, and the fact is, yeah, it might take over something else in your garden. Personally, I've got enough space where I like my strawberries to go nuts. Maybe in a big raised bed might be ideal, but like I said, in this system, you're not going to get any runners. I mean, they might make it over into another one, but there's already something in there. You can clone them, however. I have yet to try this, so you can use these to clone over and over again, but if you just wanted a big wild patch of strawberries, you're not going to get that with this system. So again, these will need to be replaced in a few years' time. So other than those so-called cons, I wouldn't even call them cons, I would just call them considerations. Other than that, this system is fantastic, because like I said, not everyone has the space, or wants the space even. This is a great way. It's so cheap once you get started. Like I said, if you're cloning your strawberries, you never have to buy seed or seedlings ever again. You're recycling. There's so many positives to this system. There are a few things to consider, however, but other than that, I really recommend that you guys go out and try this. There's no reason why you shouldn't. It's also really clean, so you could have this on a balcony somewhere. You're not going to get heaps of dirt, especially if you put that gravel in there. So it's just a nice, really clean, beautiful system that will produce an abundance of food. If you don't like strawberries or berries, pump it full of herbs, like I said earlier in the video. Oh, my dogs are carrying on. Hey! Come here, Stinkies. Oh, here she is. Look at this idiot. A little PSA if you're in the Adelaide Hills. This girl got bit by a snake the other day. $2,000 it cost to fix her, but she's still alive. But yeah, just watch out when you're walking your dogs. But that's all from us. So, leave a comment if you like this video, if you think you've learned something or you had a bit of fun. And if you want to help out the channel, the best thing you can do is share this video around with all your friends and family and whatnot. If you want to help out monetarily, jump on our website and get a bottle of our hot sauce. It's homemade. We grow a lot of the food here in the garden. So yeah, that's a great little way. And it's really cool if you do go and buy a bottle of sauce, because not only are you helping us out, you're also getting something in return. You're not just throwing money at me to make these videos. It helps us make these videos, but you're also getting something back for it, not just content. So, I've been Jacob. You've been watching Churu. This is Boudica. She's freaking out because there's dogs running around outside, but I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Joking, first try. I'm so glad that worked. Oh, it's so sweet it almost stings. Nothing better than fresh strawberries.